You know that incredibly frustrating cycle?
Yeah.
The one where you lose your temper, maybe you snap at someone you really care about, or you send an email you immediately regret, and almost a millisecond later, you're just hit with this crushing, heavy wave of guilt.
Oh, yeah. It's the worst.
Right, and you make this heartfelt promise to yourself. You apologize profusely, you swear, I mean, you literally tell yourself, I am never, ever going to do that again. And you mean it.
You genuinely do mean it in that moment.
Exactly. You genuinely mean it. But then, 3 days later, a new stressor pops up, the pressure mounts, and boom, you snap again.
Yeah.
It's like you're stuck on this terrible, repetitive loop.
Yeah, it really is a universally exhausting human experience. And I think the worst part is the aftermath, honestly,
Yeah.
because it leaves you feeling like your willpower is just fundamentally broken. Like you start to believe there is some inherent flaw in your personal operating system that just, can't be fixed.
Exactly. You just feel broken.
Mm.
Well, for you listening right now, our mission on this deep dive is to figure out exactly why sheer willpower and a really sincere apology are, um, they're never enough to break that destructive loop. We are not looking for a temporary patch today.
Right. No Band-Aids.
No band-aids. We are looking for a complete hard reboot for the human operating system. And to do that, we are jumping into a really fascinating recorded dialogue. This is from July 11th, 2026.
And it is a remarkable piece of audio, I have to say. It's a recorded conversation between a speaker named Consultant Benny and a seeker of Buddhist teachings named Venerable Ivy.
Yeah, and just a quick shout out. This was produced by Buddhist Practice Incorporated down in Australia with production work by Notebook and Don Don. So the audio gives us this incredibly clear window into their discussion, and it centers around a concept called the 30 series of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Now, okay, let's unpack this because before we go any further, we need to clarify what that actually is.
Yeah.
Because, 30 series of mindfulness sounds like a very dense, dry, traditional religious text.
Right. It sounds like something you'd read in a monastery.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
it's actually not that at all, is it?
Not even close. You can really think of the 30 series as a highly sequential 30-step framework for reverse engineering human consciousness.
Wow. Reverse engineering consciousness.
Yeah, it is essentially a psychological troubleshooting manual. It deconstructs the mind layer by layer to find the exact line of code where human suffering and frustration begin. And that is the crucial distinction we need to make right out of the gate here. Our focus today is not on moral preaching. We are dissecting the deepest micro-level mechanics of the mind to really understand why we feel so out of control.
Okay, so to fix the cycle, we have to look at why our current go-to method, saying I'm sorry and promising to try harder, why that fails so miserably every single time.
Oh, it fails because our everyday sort of cultural understanding of repentance is fundamentally flawed. According to the dialogue between Benny and Ivy, what we call repentance is usually just, well, superficial lip service.
Right, it's just words.
Exactly. It's a behavioral Band-Aid meant to smooth over social friction. But true repentance isn't about the social act of apologizing. It is about a profound, almost shattering internal awakening to the reality that your negative emotional impulses, your rage, your jealousy, they aren't just bad habits. They are actively, continuously poisoning your mind.
Okay, but hold on. Let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Is it always poison? Because sometimes, the brain tricks us into thinking those negative emotions are actually highly useful tools, right?
Sure. It certainly feels that way.
Like, for example, isn't a sudden burst of anger a really effective way to establish authority in a chaotic boardroom? Or isn't completely numbing out with a whole pizza just a valid survival mechanism after a terrible day?
Your brain absolutely tells you that. It evolved to tell you these are vital survival tools. But the dialogue introduces a crucial counter-concept called not following. In the original text, it's referred to as tro or busui.
Not following. Okay, what does that mean practically?
It means actively refusing to be hijacked by external labels and refusing to let those impulses dictate your actions. Because while, sure, anger might get the boardroom quiet for 5 minutes, the long-term toxicity it introduces into your own mental ecosystem is devastating. It is never ultimately helpful.
Man, this reminds me of that bizarre ancient parable Benny and Ivy discuss. The story of a man named Yajnadatta. I love this part.
It's such a great story.
It is. So Yajnadatta wakes up one morning, looks in the mirror, and due to some sudden bizarre hallucination, he genuinely believes his head is missing.
Which is a rather terrifying delusion to wake up to.
Right. Totally terrifying. So he goes into a state of absolute sheer panic. He runs out into the streets screaming, frantically searching everywhere for his missing head. He is in total agony, terrified of what will happen to him.
But this raises a vital question about the mechanics of suffering, right? What is the actual source of his agony?
Well, it's not the missing head, because he has it.
Exactly. It is certainly not a missing head. His head is right there on his shoulders, exactly where it has always been. The source of his madness is a completely fabricated crisis. He is being tortured by an illusion.
Yes. And the dialogue highlights this brilliant aha moment. The second Yajnadatta realizes his head was there all along. You know, whether he bumps it on a doorframe or someone simply points it out to him, the madness instantly stops.
Instantaneously.
The text they analyze literally says, when the madness ceases, that ceasing is enlightenment. It means you aren't actually broken. You are just suffering from the agonizing delusion that you are missing something essential.
Now, apply that directly to modern life. We scroll through our feeds, we see everyone else's curated success, their perfect vacations, their promotions.
No, yeah, the highlight reels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And suddenly, we feel like we are missing our head. We feel this deep, agonizing lack. We think, I don't have enough money, I'm not attractive enough, I haven't achieved enough. And so we run around screaming, metaphorically speaking. We exhaust ourselves working 80-hour weeks trying to find this thing we think we lost.
But wait, I have a very practical question about this, because this is where these philosophies often lose people, you know? Does this mean to find peace, I have to completely detach from reality? Like,
Well-
do I just ignore my credit card bills, quit my job, and go live in a cave so I stop chasing things?
Not at all.
Yeah.
That is the most common misconception, and Benny clarifies it beautifully in the recording. It is not about physical escapism. You still pay your bills. You still go to work. You still participate in society.
Okay, good.
Right. But your internal self-worth is no longer held hostage by your boss's mood or by the number in your bank account or by how many likes your post got. You stop internalizing the external labels. You stop running around screaming for the missing head because you realize you are already completely whole without any of those things.
Okay, but let's really dig into that. If we stop chasing all that external validation, if we successfully cut our attachments to success and praise, what are we actually left with? Because honestly, to a lot of people, that sounds like it would just be total emptiness, like a void.
The dialogue argues the exact opposite, actually. You aren't left with emptiness. You are left with absolute abundance. They introduce a concept called the wish-fulfilling jewel.
The wish-fulfilling jewel.
Yes, it's the idea that every single human being already possesses a pristine, powerful state of inner wisdom and completeness. It's this baseline state of unshakable calm where you need absolutely nothing external to feel okay. It is top-tier, flawless inner hardware.
So if I have this top-tier, wish-fulfilling jewel hardware pre-installed inside of me, why do I feel exhausted, anxious, and behind on life 90% of the time? Like, where is my jewel?
Your system resources are completely drained. Imagine you have a multi-million-dollar supercomputer, but 99% of its processing power is being used to run useless background programs and malware.
Oh, wow, okay.
We drain our infinite internal energy constantly chasing external sensory stimuli, wealth, status, physical pleasures, because we mistakenly believe that satisfaction lives outside of us. We're constantly downloading malware, convinced it's an upgrade.
And this brings us to a hilarious and kind of gross debate that Benny and Ivy get into regarding food, specifically to illustrate how we chase these external illusions. They talk about stinky tofu.
Yes, the stinky tofu example.
Now, if you've never had it, stinky tofu has an incredibly pungent, overpowering smell. Some people absolutely adore it. They'll cross town for it. Other people will literally cross the street to avoid the smell. And then they bring up an even more extreme regional dish cow dung soup, which is made from the undigested, fermented grass taken straight from a cow's stomach.
It's a very jarring image to drop into a philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
But it serves a brilliant mechanical purpose. Because the question they ask is, does stinky tofu or cow dung soup possess an absolute good or bad smell?
No, inherently, physically, it's just fermented protein and plant matter.
Exactly. The universe does not label it delicious or disgusting. The universe doesn't care. Humans assign those subjective labels. Our brains create the definition based on culture, habit, and childhood conditioning.
Right.
And then here is the tragedy. We exhaust our precious system resources furiously chasing the things we've labeled good and desperately running away from the things we've labeled bad. The text compares this futile effort to fishing for the moon in the water. You're diving in over and over again to grab a reflection.
Okay, I have to push back on this hard because I totally get the moon and the water analogy for abstract things like fame or prestige. Those are made up. But let's use the other example they discussed, fried chicken.
Okay, let's talk about fried chicken.
If I have been starving all day and someone hands me a hot, crispy, juicy piece of fried chicken, the dopamine rush I get when I bite into it is a physiological fact. It's real. My body reacts. It feels amazing. So how can Benny possibly argue that I'm getting nothing real out of it? Why is it a bad thing to enjoy a fleeting moment of pleasure?
What's fascinating here is that we have to look closely at the mechanism of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
The source doesn't deny the physiological reality of the dopamine. It doesn't say you aren't feeling it, but it introduces the concept of arising and ceasing. In Chinese, it's shengmei.
Arising and ceasing.
The joy, that intense dopamine hit, begins to dissipate the exact microsecond you swallow the chicken.
But so what if it's gone? I still enjoyed it for 5 minutes. That has to be better than 0 minutes of joy, right?
Because of what it leaves behind. When that spike of pleasure ceases, it creates a void, a deficit. You didn't capture a permanent entity of joy that you get to keep. Now you need more chicken to sustain the feeling. Or you feel overly full and sluggish, or you feel a pang of guilt.
Oh.
You just spent infinite internal peace to buy 5 minutes of fleeting pleasure, and now you have to pay off the interest. You're exhausting your wish-fulfilling jewel to constantly shovel coal into a furnace that can never, ever stay hot. That is the trap.
Okay, when you explain the deficit it creates, that changes the perspective entirely. It's a terrible return on investment.
Precisely.
But if the external world's temptations are just these subjective labels we invent, just arising and ceasing reflections, what about the self that is experiencing them? Is the me that feels the dopamine and the guilt fake too?
This is where the 30 series executes its deepest, most startling deconstruction. It points out our most fatal error as human beings. We confuse our physical bodies and our mental afflictions like greed, anxiety, or anger with our true identity.
The dialogue breaks this down using an ancient framework called the 5 skandhas, which translates roughly to the 5 aggregates that make up our experience. But to make sense of this, let's use a modern metaphor. Imagine the human experience as being trapped inside a heavy, low-quality, bug-filled VR headset. Let's walk through all 5 skandhas and slow down a real-world moment to see how they work.
Let's do it. Let's take a universally triggering scenario. Say you are sitting at your desk and you receive an incredibly insulting, condescending email from a coworker.
Perfect. So the first skandha is form. In our analogy, form is the physical hardware. It's the bulky VR headset strapped to your face, the screen, the pixels. In the real world, form is just the physical reality.
Yeah.
Your body sitting in the chair and the light emitting from your computer monitor displaying text.
Right. It's just stuff.
Yeah.
Then we move to the second skandha, sensation. This is the raw haptic feedback. When you read that email, sensation is the physiological data. Your heart rate suddenly spikes, your chest gets tight, your face flushes.
Just biology doing its thing.
Exactly. Notice that at this stage, it is completely neutral biological data. It's just a bodily change.
But it doesn't stay neutral for long because of the third skandha, perception. Perception is the software rendering that raw data into a subjective thought. It takes the tightening chest and the words on the screen and interprets them. They are disrespecting me. This is an attack on my competence.
Exactly. The software has rendered a threat. And that brings us to the fourth skandha, which is volition, or in Chinese, xing.
This was the part that completely blew my mind. If we stick with the tech analogy, volition is like stealthy malware running deep in the background of your operating system.
Yes.
It's that underlying urge, the deeply ingrained impulse that triggers before your conscious mind even realizes what's happening. It takes that perception of a threat and immediately executes a command. Destroy them, hit reply all, and humiliate them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the engine of karma. Volition is the exact mechanism that keeps us trapped in the destructive loop we talked about at the very beginning of the dive. You snap at your loved ones because that volition malware executes the anger protocol before your higher reasoning has a chance to intervene. It happens in a fraction of a millisecond.
Which leads to the fifth and final skandha, consciousness.
Yes. Consciousness is the resulting flawed operating system built on top of all those bias codes, false perceptions, and malicious volitions. It's the angry me that angrily types out that reply all email, fully convinced that this enraged identity is real, solid, and permanent, when in reality, it was just a chain reaction of buggy code.
So we are all walking around in these heavy VR headsets running terrible malware, utterly convinced the pixels are real life. How do we get out? How do we take the headset off?
The solution offered by Benny and Ivy's dialogue is a process called turning consciousness into wisdom. You have to transform from being a passive victim, blindly reacting to what the buggy hardware shows you, into an active developer who can actually rewrite the code in real time.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. We understand the illusion of external labels like the stinky tofu, and we see the buggy VR headset we're trapped in with the 5 Scandas. But how do we practically execute this system reboot?
It takes work.
Because when I am blinded by sudden rage from an insulting email, there is no pause button, I am just in it. How do we intercept the malware?
It comes back to the very first concept we discussed, repentance, but specifically what the text calls sincere repentance. We established earlier that this isn't about crying or feeling guilty. Sincere repentance is an act of intense, laser-focused willpower. It is the act of expanding the microsecond gap between sensation and volition.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How do you do that in the heat of the moment?
By recognizing the physical sensation before the perception software labels it. When you read that email and you feel the heat rising in your chest, you actively intercept it right there. You say, this tight chest is just a sensation. It's an arising and ceasing biological event. You refuse to let the volition malware execute its attack command.
You essentially build a firewall in real time.
Yes, exactly. A mental firewall.
You see the anger for what it is. A subjective illusion that is only going to drain your system resources and leave you with a massive deficit. And by refusing to execute that code, you start taking the VR headset off. The dialogue notes that the door to ultimate freedom, what Buddhist texts often call the Pure Land, has never actually been locked.
We just keep locking ourselves out by voluntarily choosing to run the malware. We choose the familiar, predictable misery of our destructive loop over the immense effort it takes to reboot the system. But here is the incredible promise of the 30 series. By consistently intercepting the code, by practicing this sincere repentance in the micro moments of your day, you eventually reach a state called non-retrogression.
Non-retrogression, that is such a powerful term.
It means you have rewritten the base code of your mind so thoroughly that you never downgrade back to the old, ignorant operating system. You don't lose your temper and fall back into the guilt cycle because the malware that used to trigger the anger has been permanently uninstalled. You have reclaimed your wish-fulfilling jewel.
So for you listening right now, the call to action is profound but incredibly practical. The next time you find yourself agonizing over a situation that you've labeled bad, or you are desperately, exhaustingly chasing a promotion or a purchase you've labeled good, take just 1 second to pause.
Just 1 second.
Ask yourself, is this real? Or is this just a definition my brain invented? Am I furiously fishing for the moon in the water?
And that brings us to a final parting thought to really contextualize what is at stake here. We've talked deeply about how our minds run this volition malware, making us react blindly to stimuli. But consider this. We live in a modern attention economy. Social media algorithms, 24-hour news cycles, targeted outrage marketing, entire multi-trillion-dollar industries are engineered specifically to trigger your volition malware.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they are.
They rely on you reacting blindly to a tight chest and a feeling of outrage. They monetize your destructive loops. So if true enlightenment comes from intercepting that code and realizing your head has been on your shoulders the whole time, then achieving inner peace isn't just about feeling good.
It's a rebellion.
It is the ultimate act of rebellion against a world that is built to profit off your suffering. The cage causing your pain never had a lock on it. You just have to decide to stop running the code.